Howdy guys, back again to do another book review. This time I'm reviewing The Naked Sun by Isaac Asmiov. So this is the second book in a series of books by Isaac Asimov. I think it's called the Robot series or Foundation series, I'm not sure. But it's the second book and it follows the same characters that were in the last one. So if you've read The Caves of Steel, you'll already be familiar with the main characters and the idea, I suppose, of the plot. In this book, Elijah Bailey, who's the main sort of detective, police guy, is sent from Earth to a planet called Solaria to investigate a murder. And the plot is largely, it sort of has two parts. The first part is about him exploring this new planet and getting to know about it, and the second part is also the solving of the murder mystery. So it appeals to sort of science fiction and to crime fans. As I like to do after I'd read a short smidgen of the book, I had a sort of sit down and think about what my first impressions were. The first thing which I was really surprised by, and I remember being surprised by in The Caves of Steel, is how much of an easy read it is. I think when I saw the name Isaac Asmiov, I sort of half expected a very sciencey, very complicated book, but actually it is a lovely, easy read book, and much more, much more accessible than I expected. Another thing that was quite noticeable to me was that I'd forgotten about the characters. It was quite a while ago I read The Caves of Steel, so I had forgotten about who Elijah was, and actually the name didn't even ring a bell. But as I realised they were the characters from the last book, it all started to click into place. And I think, to be honest, it would be very easy. There was no requirement to have read the last book, so it would have been easy to have just carried on, even if I hadn't recognised them. At an early stage of reading, I found that I was sort of vaguely interested in the plot of the book, sort of the solving of the murder mystery, but actually I was much more involved with the discussion of the new planet, finding out about it, and that, for me, at the start of the book particularly, was a real strength, was that actually the murder was almost unimportant. I was completely involved in learning about this new planet alongside Elijah, alongside the main character, and finding out all about it. In terms of positives, there are a couple of things that really stood out to me. The first was that it didn't feel in any way predictable, and I've read some other crime books, crime thrillers, and at times I feel like they follow this sort of predictable arc. And I think having the science fiction element really detracted from that, because it was almost just like a subplot that, yes, there was a murder being solved, but that didn't feel like the main point to me, and it didn't feel obvious. In fact, it wasn't until very late in the book that I even began to have moments where you go, oh, I think I know who it is. And usually when I read crime thrillers, I find that you do that all the time, and it didn't, because it didn't feel like that was the point, that you were trying to find out who the murderer was. The real strength to me of the book is just the whole exploration of this new world, this new planet, and it's very similar in that respect to Caves of Steel, because the Caves of Steel explored Earth and this how Earth was in this time. The Naked Sun explores the planet of Solaria and the society that they've built there and how that differs. I found it completely fascinating, and as he met all these different characters as part of his investigation, you learnt more about the world, and it really dominated the story. But I think that was the point, and it was a huge success, because learning or exploring the new worlds was just so fascinating that I really thoroughly enjoyed it. When I try to think of negatives, I find it quite difficult, actually. The only thing that I could even really call a negative was something that I didn't discover until very near the end, and I think it's probably quite typical of crime stories, and that was the long conversations and long explanations when the truth was coming out. I've already said that I'm not a massive fan of crime novels, and I find that they do this a lot when they're trying to piece all the clues together. They rely on really long, drawn-out conversations, which I tend to lose interest in pretty fast. So that was a slight downside. But then, I'm not sure how else you would explain how all the clues fit together, because if you didn't, that would drive me insane as well. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but I think it was slightly tainted by the fact that I just finished reading Delirium by Lauren Oliver, which I loved, and I think that made it feel worse, because I did really enjoy it. I read it really quickly in just a couple of days, and it wasn't a bad book at all. There was nothing that I thought, I can't be bothered to read. So I feel it's very high, 3 3/4 stars, shall we say. I felt that the book was very dominated by the exploration of the new planet, but I felt that that was the point, and the murder was sort of just like a pleasant surprise at the end when a murder was solved, which I remember feeling very similar to when I read Caves of Steel. I feel that this book would appeal to people who like their science fiction, but also to people who like crime thrillers. But I would say that people who like crime thrillers, it's probably best if they have some interest in the science fiction too, because that does feel like a secondary issue. It's not the main, although it drives the plot, it's not the main point of the story. The point of the story is exploring a new world. I fully intend to read the next book in the series, which is Robots of Dawn, I believe. I'm loving Isaac Asmiov, and actually I think I would have almost loved, because the books are quite short, the series of books, I think I would have enjoyed to read them one after the other. But unfortunately, life's not that kind, and I'm currently waiting on my next book haul, which is coming up. So if you have any ideas of books I should buy, then leave me a comment and let me know, because I'm going to buy a bunch of books soon. I'm running out of books on my Kindle, so that's where we're at. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.